Who doesn't want to be a good storyteller? From marketers, Instagram influencers, anyone who's ever had a minute in a lift to win someone's attention. We all know the power of stories. But if every one of us in this room started telling a story right now, what would we hear? A storyteller isn't much without an audience. Our theme today is the art of connection. I believe that the sharing of stories lies right at the heart of human connection. But as a species, we need two equally important skills to connect. We need to tell stories and hear them. Sometimes the art is in the telling, sometimes it's in the listening. Today, I want to talk about that underappreciated group of people whose names we might never remember. Not the storytellers, the Stephen Spielbergs, Angelous, JK Rowlings, but rather the story listeners. I'm going to explain how every one of us can become a better story listener and why we should. We are divided. Not just here in Brexit Britain, but around the world. An international Ipsos Mori study last year found an unhappy trend of societies across the globe becoming more divided and less tolerant of difference. But, thank goodness, we don't have to follow trends. We can start new ones. A few days after the 2016 US election, 10 Trump voters and 11 Clinton voters spent a weekend together. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? But don't worry, they were in the safe and soothing hands of a family therapist, on a mission to understand one another and absolutely not to convince anyone to their own points of view. The participants discovered something remarkable. They liked each other. They wanted to see each other again. Building on that first meeting, the Better Angels movement was born. Now working across 50 states, Better Angels brings reds and blues together to learn about the values and experiences that inform each other's politics. In short, they hear each other's stories. They ask each other, what has happened in your life to bring you to this belief? So often, once we know the full story, hostility melts away. It transforms into empathy. But it's different with our friends and family. We understand them, don't we? When it comes to the people we've shared food, holidays and Netflix with, surely we already know their stories. There was a time, about 12 years ago, when my mum got into the habit of phoning me several times a week. She had just one topic of conversation. She needed to tell me in meticulous detail about a never-ending series of very specific IT problems. I tried everything to help her. I asked her if she tried turning it off and on again. I asked her if she thought of phoning my brother. In fact, I suggested quite a long list of people she could ask for help, people who weren't me. The calls persisted. Eventually, I explained that regrettably, I was unable to help on this occasion and I wished to unsubscribe from further updates. Then I got on with my busy, all about me, 20-something life. I was working as a researcher at the time, mainly for BBC Radio 4. I was pretty low down in the pecking order, but nevertheless, every day I got to phone up world-class leaders and experts and pick their brains. Oh yeah, when I was talking to distinguished people with important stories to tell, I was all ears. I don't come out of this story well. I should just warn you now. It gets worse. Anyway, actually my favourite phone conversations weren't with leaders or celebrities. They were actually with real people. And their names haven't stayed with me, but their stories have. The Auschwitz survivor, so full of hope and love for future generations. The elderly nun who'd stood and watched as her best friend was gunned down in front of her in the Brazilian rainforest because she wouldn't stop protesting against illegal logging. The mother who took her own son to Dignitas. I loved these conversations. I barely spoke, but I listened like mad. I typed notes at lightning speed, trying to get every detail down so I could write up briefing documents for on-air interviews. It felt... and there was something else going on in these phone calls. It often felt like we built up an intimate connection. Quite often, as I was thanking the person I'd spoken to for their time and winding up the conversation, they'd cut in. No, thank you. It's been good to talk. They sounded surprised, relieved, unburdened. It felt nice, like I was helping in some small way. But there was something missing, because my primary motivation was to make great radio, and I was basically using these inspiring people as a means to an end. And that, to me, felt a bit dirty. So I decided to do something more worthwhile in my spare time to balance things out. I signed up as a volunteer Samaritan. The Samaritans is a brilliant charity with a simple mission: to support anyone who's in emotional distress. At the heart of its service is a free, confidential, 24-hour helpline, a lifeline for anyone who just needs to be heard. That short period of time working for the Samaritans changed my life. 3 of the principles that I learned in their brilliant training program have stayed with me all this time, and those principles have had such an impact on my relationships that I want to share them with you today because they might help you too. So here goes. Okay, number 1, listen actively. You pay attention to what's being said and what's left unsaid. Ask open questions, prompt, encourage. Sometimes you don't even need to ask a question. You just allow the speaker their moment of silence. Don't jump in. You also have to show that you're listening. Nod, make eye contact, repeat back in your own words what you're hearing. Just reassuring the speaker that you're not about to hijack the conversation and steer it off in a direction that suits you puts them in charge, and it gives them the space and the confidence to go deeper, to share the things that are hardest to talk about. For example, if your mother wanted to talk to you about a problem with her computer, you could listen, ask questions, not try desperately to change the subject. Okay, number 2, focus on feelings. Samaritan volunteers help callers to move beyond the facts of their situation and explore how it's making them feel. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? It's such an important question, because when you ask someone how they're feeling, you show them that you care, and you reassure them that however they're feeling, it is okay. For example, if your mother keeps trying to tell you how frustrated an ongoing IT problem is making her, you could respond to the distress in her voice and empathise with her feelings. rather than trying to solve the technical issue when you know, and so does she, that you're a technological idiot. Okay, number 3, don't judge. Samaritans always withhold judgment and they don't give advice. Now, I did struggle with that one because my advice is actually really wise. But no, apparently, if you give advice, you're taking someone's story over and making it all about you. So what you need to do is listen to them. When somebody's in distress and you want to help them, let them do the talking. Let them reflect on how they feel about their actions. Because actually how you feel is not what's important here. When somebody feels judged, they immediately become defensive. They clam up, and that beautiful opportunity for connection is gone. For example, if you make your mother feel like her experiences are trivial, eventually she will confide in someone else, or she won't confide in anyone. So this is all hard work. I get it wrong all the time. Still, I'm not saying that I've learned how to always be like this. And also, of course, you can't act like a Samaritan in every single human interaction. If you're trying to get a builder to quote for loft insulation and you insist on talking about emotions and feelings and you refuse to discuss any facts, it's going to be a surreal conversation. But knowing how to be there for someone else feels to me more important than ever today, as every couple of minutes every one of us gets a little bleep in our pockets, tugging our attention away from the real, living, breathing people in front of us. I think it was after a Samaritan's training session that my mum next phoned. She'd had that error code again. Finally, at long last, the penny clattered to the ground, and I listened. And that little switch from facts to feelings, it changed everything. And she only needed about 5 minutes, and she was done. And she was really happy to talk about other things, but she had to tell her story to get past it. It was a long journey that wasn't necessary. Anyway, it was all a long time ago, and I don't work for the BBC anymore. Finally, after all these years, I have found a creative path that lets me fulfill the fun, creative stuff, but also to be there for other people. Today, I'm a celebrant, a professional story listener. We celebrants design personalised ceremonies to help people mark major events in their lives. So most often we work on weddings and funerals, but a celebrant can help you to find the words or the rituals to mark anything important in your life, from the loss of a beloved pet to the creation of a new blended family. One of the most humbling and privileged parts of my job is spending time with bereaved families. I walk into people's homes in the aftermath of an earthquake. In kitchens or living rooms, piled high with cards and flowers and lovingly cooked casseroles that no one's got the stomach to eat. I sit and listen, and my cup of tea goes cold. And spending so much time with the bereaved gives you a unique insight into family relationships. Often we'll sit together, I'll sit with the family, and we're trying to pull together the story to create a eulogy. But even in the closest and most loving of families, there are often huge gaps when no one knows how years or even decades were spent. There are questions, unexpected emotions, an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. Because death robs us of our power to connect. And now is the time to improve our relationships. So that is the crux of my talk. Follow those 3 Samaritan's tips with your friends, with your family, with the stranger on the bus who won't let you read in peace, with the keyboard warrior who hates everything you believe in. Just try it. It's one of the kindest things you can do for someone, to really hear them. So we can't all be famous raconteurs, novelists, filmmakers, but every one of us can become a story listener. You just have to listen to the stories that aren't told by experts, coax out stories that have been hidden for decades. And once you get good at it, it can become your superpower. Connection, when it happens, can transform the most intractable of situations. It could help you heal conflicts or tensions that have been festering in your family for years. It could bring you a longed-for intimacy with a parent, your child, your sibling, a connection you really didn't believe was possible. Maya Angelou famously said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So, later on today, or tomorrow, whenever you next have a moment with somebody who matters to you, ask a question. Hear the answer. Ask another. Hear the story.